one thing I've said for a long time, the best way to sell something is an auction, because one man and another man, they both beef up their chest and say, I got more money than you. And next thing you know, they're overpaying for the property because neither one of them want to swallow their pride and put their hand down. But I'm pretty good at putting my hand down.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And Point Central, the leading provider of enterprise-scale smart home automation for short and long-term rental property managers. Learn more at pointcentral.com. Hello and welcome to episode 101. My guest today is Stephen Benedict. He is the owner of Stevens Homes and Investments, as well as West Michigan Capital Fund. Stephen is a Muskegon area investor who specializes in tax sales and sheriff sales. So we're going to be talking about those today. Stephen, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I mean, I know you're from Muskegon. You own a lot of properties.
Yes.
And how long have you been doing this?
I bought my first property, a single-family house, on my 18th birthday. It was in the worst neighborhood that you could imagine. I learned from it and grown from it and have not looked back since.
So starting with that first one, what were the mistakes you made?
I tried to do everything myself, and now I realize that time is money and you have to get these done and get them on the market.
Okay, so the mistake was trying to do it all yourself.
Yes.
Getting in there, doing the rehab.
Yes, and the rehab, 2-bedroom house, 700 square feet, took about a year.
Were you just learning on the job, or did you already have some experience?
I had Time Life books.
Time Life books?
Yes.
You weren't using the YouTube or the...
No, and one of the most expensive mistakes I made was I was replumbing the house, and because I was going to live there, so I was able to pull the permit on my own, and I didn't prime the plumbing pipe, and I went to turn the water on, and everything burst. Water went everywhere. Soak the furnace that I just put in, and it was a very costly mistake. So now you want to, if you use plastic, you want to put that purple stuff on there before the glue.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So that's pretty traumatic first experience there.
But I kept going.
Yeah. Why did you keep going? I mean, most people would have said, "Screw this! I'm gonna go get a second job."
Yeah. So when I sold it, I was 19 years old. And I'd like to say I got a check for about $42,000 at the age of 19.
Oh, so even after all that headache and trouble,
yes,
you still sold it for $42,000 profit.
Yes. And
wow.
My mentor at the time said, I will hold your hand for another one as long as you promise me not to buy anything materialistic. So I still drove around like the 89 Blazer that I had, and we looked for the next deal.
Oh, so what was he didn't want you to buy anything materialistic, like go buy the watch or the
car or anything that a 19-year-old kid wants that's flashy. And I just, it didn't interest me.
So you weren't interested in that either. Did
No.
you just roll that money into your next investment?
Yes.
What was your next investment after that?
The next one that I bought was over by Glenside School in Muskegon on Hudson, and that one was about triple the price. That one was $24,000. The first one I bought was $8,000. I got an FHA loan. I had to put $240 down to buy it.
I can't believe you were able to get a loan for an $8,000 property.
Yeah, that was back in 2001 with
Okay.
Republic Bank is who I had used.
Okay.
And then applied for a home equity loan right off the bat because lending was very easy back then. And that's where the funds came from to fix it up.
All right. Wow. So that you rolled it into your next one, it was triple the price at $24,000, which still seems pretty low. How'd that one turn out for you?
That one I didn't make as much on. I think it had some problems in the basement with water coming in. There was clay, so we had to put like an ever-dry basement system in. That was like $17K. I think when it was all said and done, I made like maybe $20K. But I hired everything out, and that rehab took about 2.5 months. So
okay. So if you could compare the $20,000 profit in 2.5 months, where you do a lot less of the work,
yes,
versus the $42,000 profit in over a year, where you did all the work.
Yes, and
which one do you think you came out ahead on?
Definitely not doing any work.
Yeah.
There's no headache involved, and as long as you hire the right contractors, things get done in a very good, timely manner.
Yeah. So let's cut forward to today. You were telling me before the show, you currently own 67 units, mostly multifamily, 2 to 6 units, and with other investors, you have another 55 units. So you've been around the block a couple of times.
Yes, I've dealt with 2 different management companies in Muskegon, and I started out in the inner city where it's tough to collect rent. It comes with a headache. The returns are a lot higher in the inner city. But about 10 years ago, I said, I'm only going to start buying in areas that if I had a 10-year-old daughter, would she be able to collect the rent at 10 o'clock at night? So that's where you will find the majority of my properties now.
Really safe
Yes.
areas. Do you have a 10-year-old daughter, and do you send her out to collect rent?
No, I don't. But I do have a 12-year-old daughter, but she doesn't collect any rent. She does go in places. And after we get them back and they're trashed, and she says, people really live like this. And I tell her that it didn't look like this when they moved in. But that's the downside of renting and being a landlord.
Yeah. Now our topic of discussion today is the sheriff sales and the tax sales.
Yes.
So why don't we get into that? I mean, starting with, how did you get involved in those in the first place?
So it was probably 2006, I think it was. I started buying foreclosures. In the previous years, I was with realtors, and we were buying things from probate court, estates, who knows what. I know I didn't buy any foreclosures till like 2006. And then probably 2007, I realized that banks were starting to put money into these properties and making a profit. So I said to myself, how can I cut out the middleman? So I started doing some research, and it's actually the law. When someone falls behind on their mortgage, they have to offer that for public sale. And you can purchase it for $1 more than what's owing to the bank or what the bank is willing to sell it for on the courthouse steps.
So by law, the bank has to offer it on the market.
Yes.
At an auction.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's published 4 weeks ahead of time, so there's no surprises. And I just hired an attorney to walk me through my first one, and I've never looked back since.
Well, walk us through the process. And are we talking about sheriff sales right now or tax?
We talk about sheriff sales first. Yeah.
So let's focus on sheriff sales. Walk us through that, how that works.
So I believe that the law is once you're 3 months behind, I've seen people as far as a year behind, your name gets published in the local legal newspaper.
And this is behind on your mortgage.
This is behind on your mortgage.
So the loan you're paying back to the bank.
Yes.
Once you're behind on that, then it gets published.
Yes.
Okay.
And that newspaper in some counties is free. Some counties it's $2 or $3 a week. It generally comes out once a week. And they list the parcel number, the people's information, what amount is owed, the bank, etc., with everything else that goes with the property, including the legal description. Now you have the information you need to try to find the address and see if it's a valuable asset. Once you figure out if it's a valuable asset, you probably should, and if it's something you're interested in, you should probably pull title work, because they sell first mortgages, second mortgages, third mortgages, condo association dues, you name it. If it can be attached to a property, they can sell it at a sheriff's sale. And you really want to make sure you're buying a first mortgage, because if you're buying a second or third, you really have no position in the mortgage business.
Yeah, explain that. What's the difference between a first mortgage and a second or third mortgage?
So a lot of times you'll find that people are behind on their second, but they're current on their first. So if you were to buy a second mortgage, you would have to pay off the first to become a first lien position. And at the end of the day, we all know that first is the leader in the race, and that's the one that you really need to get a hold of in order to renegotiate with the people, kick them out, re-rent it, whatever you're going to do, you need to buy a first mortgage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first mortgage is just when someone gets a loan on their home, if they buy a home, they're getting a mortgage, and that's their first mortgage. Later on, they might pull out some equity, get a second mortgage on it, or a line of credit, a home equity line of credit, which is technically a second, I think. That's in the second position. Any other loan they take on that property is secondary or tertiary to the primary loan, and that primary loan is the one that has to foreclose. You can't foreclose. Can you foreclose on the second?
Yes,
loan?
you can, and they send them to the sale all the time. But again, if you're going to pay for the second, you really should know what's owed on the first. I have bought a second mortgage in my career. I have done it. But the first was like 20 years old, so I knew they had paid it down quite a bit, and it actually ended up working out okay. But for beginners and people that don't know how to do the numbers, you really want to be in first lien position. And then when you buy a first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, I have bought one with 5 mortgages. I was the first in first position, but they all go away. They basically go through the shredder.
Somebody actually had 5 mortgages on their home?
Yes, it was in Fruitport, actually this year.
Wow. So when you foreclose on the first mortgage, you're wiping away all the others.
Yes. As soon as a judge signs the certified judgment and everyone's notified in the case, everything goes away that's attached to that property, with the exception of assessments and water bills.
Assessments and water bills. And that would be like tax assessments?
Yes, tax assessments,
property taxes?
Sidewalk, water and sewer assessments, things of that nature.
So if someone were to owe $5,000 on their property tax in buying that first mortgage, you would still have to pay that.
Yes,
that
it
tax.
comes with it. That's part of you doing your title work and your due diligence.
That's how you find out what other expenses you're going to have.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So what are the steps then? So the addresses are published in the papers, or just the mortgage and the note holder?
Yeah. There's no addresses. Maybe 1 out of 50, the attorney might put an address in there, commonly known as, but other than that, it's usually the parcel number.
So you have to do a little detective work to figure out what this property is.
Yeah, and a lot of that you can do right from home. The Register of Deeds is a pay-as-you-go website just about in every county, and you can get the address for as little as $1, depending on what county you're in. Or you can just go to the Register of Deeds and research on their computers for free.
Okay. I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. So do you go down to the Register of Deeds?
I do it right from home.
Do you? Okay, yeah. So you figure out what the address is. What do you do then? What do you do with that information?
I then try to look at comps in the area and see if it's going to be a potential good deal for the published amount. If it's not going to be a good deal for the published amount, it generally goes off in a pile on the left-hand side of my desk. The published amount is the amount that is what's owed, and you need to bid $1 more than that. The day of the sale, the banks do discount them if they feel as though they don't want to take it back and foreclose themselves. So I have seen properties with $125,000 published amount get sent to the sale that morning for $50,000 or $55,000, and then it becomes a deal.
Wow. So that means the bank is owed $125,000 on that property, but they're willing to just let it go for $50,000, $60,000.
Yes.
What is the bank thinking then? I mean, what is their position in all of this? Why would they let something go for less than what it's worth to them?
So a lot of people don't understand about non-performing loans on the bank's books. And this came from a good friend of mine that's a president at a local bank. When they have bad debt on their books, their loan power is 10 times the amount. So if they have a $50,000 bad loan, that really consumes $500,000 worth of lending power, because in the end, everything is regulated by the FDIC and the federal regulators.
So the FDIC is telling them that you can't loan there's $500,000 that you can't loan, or are they saying you have to have $500,000 in cash reserves that has to be in your bank that you can't loan out?
I believe it's cash reserves. I'm not 100% sure on that. I do know there has been a time that a friend of mine, 800 score, slam dunk deal, went to a credit union and they said, we have no lending right now. So I know that it's possible for local credit unions to run out of money and not be able to lend in certain times.
So to put that in context, if they're owed $125,000, that's $1.25 million that the bank has to have in cash reserves.
Yes.
So if they slash the price to $50,000, now that's only $500,000 they have to have in reserves.
Yes.
And that gives them a $725,000 that they can lend out now.
Yes. Now, if they slash the price and that property is purchased by a third party like myself or some of my competitors, they're back to square one. They just basically have a charge off of the $75,000. And I have heard in some cases with local banks, they send the homeowner a 1099 for the difference.
Oh, so the homeowner who just got foreclosed on gets a 1099 that says, well, you owed $125,000, we sold it for $50,000, so that's $75,000 in
miscellaneous income.
Miscellaneous income.
Yes.
That you now are responsible for paying taxes on.
Yes.
So the homeowner gets themselves in a lot of trouble if they're not paying their mortgage. And I'll bet this comes as quite a shock to them when they get that 1099.
Yes, it does. I had a really good friend of mine that received a 1099 and was in utter shock. And he did a short sale, which the bank agreed and he agreed. And then all of a sudden in January, he gets a 1099 for miscellaneous income. And I said, you should have known that was coming. Someone has to claim it.
Mm-hmm. Why? How would he know that was coming? Who would tell him this?
You would think a realtor or an attorney or whoever's helping them through the short sale process. I don't know. A lot of times people just tell people what they want to hear to get the deal done. Mm-hmm. And it's an unfortunate situation. Yeah.
Interesting. So important to know on both ends that if the bank writes it off like that, they're gonna cut you a 1099. That what did you call it? Undeclared or
miscellaneous income.
Miscellaneous income. Let's talk for a moment about Point Central, the leading provider of enterprise-scale smart home automation for short and long-term rental property managers, and how their exciting technology can help you control property access to vendors and potential tenants. No more time wasted waiting for late appointments or no-shows. Oversee energy usage and analyze data in order to reduce utility and maintenance expenses. Eliminate the cost of keys or rekeying locks. Command higher rents and increase tenant retention, and provide tools for tenants and managers to monitor the property to improve safety and security. And it's all done through cloud technology, utilizing encrypted data and private cellular service. And best of all, the return on investment of installing Point Central's technology is upwards of 25% a year. The future of property management is here, and you can find out more by visiting pointcentral.com. So that's the bank's point of view. That's why they would let something go for less than what is owed to them. What's the next step in the process then?
The next step in the process is, like I said, assess the property, drive by it, look on Zillow. Zillow's not very accurate, but give or take $10,000, they're pretty close.
At least get you somewhere in the ballpark.
Yeah, get you somewhere in the ballpark. Mm-hmm. If you're thinking it's worth $500,000 and Zillow says it's worth $100,000, you probably should drive by it. Mm-hmm. Zillow can be off, but they're usually not off that much. And this is all stuff that I just do right at home. So if the numbers make sense, I know before I leave my desk if it's potentially a good deal or not. So you drive by it. If it's something that's interested and it meets your income criteria, you then order some title work and make sure it's a first. I do my own title work now. In the very beginning, I did use people. It can get quite expensive to get a preliminary title policy.
How do you do your own title work? You just go down to the registrar of deeds and...
I do it right from home, and I just make sure that it's a first. So the mortgage date, the LIBOR and page and everything is published in the legal news. and you basically want to see if there's anything else open on that parcel number prior to that. And if there is, make sure that it also comes with a discharge. If it doesn't come with a discharge, you're probably looking at a second or third mortgage.
And you can find all this out online, huh?
Right from home.
Really? Wow. Okay. Wow. So you're looking at it. You're doing your own title work. How many of these are you looking at in a given week?
I've just graduated to my 7th county that I purchased in, and pulled the trigger 2 weeks ago in Traverse City, Grand Traverse County. So I would say between all 7 counties, I'm looking at between 15 to 20 potential properties a week.
Potential, and that's just like you get the information.
Yep.
There's more than that published probably, but these are the ones that you're interested in.
Yes. There's not as many published up north. Matter of fact, up north they only have a sale once a month, whereas locally here, Kent, Ottawa, Muskegon, there's a sale once a week. So there's a lot more here locally than if you were to go north.
Okay, so what are the counties that you're
Grand Traverse County, Charlevoix County, Mason County, Ottawa, Muskegon, Kent, Washtenaw, and Berrien County.
Okay, all in Michigan.
All in Michigan.
So are you physically going to the auctions?
I do physically go to the auction.
So you're traveling around a lot then.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I've met some cool people.
Okay, yeah, I bet there's probably a group of you that you probably all get to know each other by now.
Yeah, yep. It's just a matter of who's gonna win that day.
Does it get competitive?
It does. There's times where you have to swallow your pride and not pay more than what it's really worth. One thing I've said for a long time, the best way to sell something is an auction, because one man and another man, they both beef up their chest and say, I got more money than you. And next thing you know, they're overpaying for the property because neither one of them want to swallow their pride and put their hand down. But I'm pretty good at putting my hand down.
Yeah, so you're right. Auctions are a good place to do that. But I'll bet they're also a great place to find deals as well.
Yeah, and you have to remember, too, with the sheriff sale, and I don't know about your situation, but with the sheriff sale, you don't get to see the inside of these. You're basically standing on the sidewalk, and hopefully you pulled a tax card to see how many bedrooms it's supposed to be. I've been burned a couple times. When I mean burned, I've only made $1,000 instead of $30,000. But there was a time where you pull a tax card and it's a 4-bedroom, and you get in it, and it's actually a 2-bedroom, and both bedrooms are 20 by 15. They merge bedrooms, so you can only do the due diligence the best that you can, but it's ultimately when you drill the lock out or that locksmith opens up the house after the redemption period, and you either say, yeah, I'm glad I bought this, or I can't believe I just did this.
Yeah. So getting back to the numbers, like you're looking at 25 a week?
Yeah, 15 to 20.
15 to 20 a week. Yeah. How many are you actually going and bidding on?
I would say I try to bid on like 3 or 4 a week. I have successfully purchased 1 a week this year.
Okay, so you're averaging 1 a week. So,
yeah.
So that's a 1 out of 15, 1 out of 20 a week that you're actually successfully, which is not a bad record, I'd imagine.
Yeah, my criteria is a little bit different than the competition. There has to be a lot of meat on the bone for me. As I stated in the beginning, I used to rehab everything, and now I strictly just sell to other investors.
So you're picking them up at auction and then selling them off?
Yes. We drill the locks out, we clean them out, and they're listed if through a local realtor, if they're not in my network already, to offer them for sale.
So you have a network of realtors in all these different counties that help you sell them, huh?
I have one realtor. I have a network of investors that are looking to rehab. And, here in Kent County, people are going to the sheriff's sale just to find rentals. So obviously they're going to pay more than I would be willing to pay. And then there's some investors that want to rehab it themselves. But for me, it's got to be almost double the potential of equity for me to invest in it, because we're not working on them anymore. I haven't worked on any yet this year.
Really? Okay. Are you holding any of these then? Or are you strictly...
I think there might be 2 that I've held this year that are now rentals.
That you've added to your portfolio?
Yes.
So you've identified the properties. You say you get one, on average, one a week at a sheriff's sale. Well, tell me about a sheriff's sale. What is that like? I don't think I've ever been to one.
So every single county is different. And Muskegon probably being the weirdest county of them all, they do everything completely different than everywhere else. So in Muskegon, they hold a sale on Fridays, which is a normal day, but they leave it open for 1 hour. So you have all these newbies that come in and get the list because they don't know how to find the address, and then they'll run out within that hour and drive by the property.
Wow, so they're doing everything in 1 hour and then coming back and bidding on it.
In 1 hour.
Meanwhile, you already know all the info.
I already know everything. So I'm just sitting in the courtroom, in the benches, the pews, or whatever you prefer to call them, just waiting to see who I'm going to end up bidding against in Muskegon. Other counties, on the other hand, if the sale starts at 10 o'clock, it's probably over by 10:05. So you know immediately who the players are and who's just there to watch.
They're ready. They come ready to roll.
Yes.
They know what they want, and they know what they're going to pay for it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so when you get to the sale, every county is different. And I suggest if you go that you call the local sheriff's office. That's who sends a court officer, or in Grand Traverse County, it's the lieutenant of the department that holds them. And you need to find out if you need to bring a certified check beforehand or if it has to be all cash. I don't do Kalamazoo because you have to have all cash. I've heard that at their sales.
Like you got to show up with cash in hand, not a check.
$150,000 cash in your pocket.
That's a little scary.
And I have friends that don't go to Kalamazoo just for that reason.
Yeah, it seems like that could lead to problems in the parking lot.
Yes. And the lady that runs
big van pull up next to you.
Yeah.
And, before you know it, you're in the back of that van, and they're taking the money out of your pocket.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So I don't do anything in Kalamazoo County for that reason. Mm-hmm. But some counties require a check ahead of time if you're going to bid to make sure that you're serious. And it has to be certified. There's no personal checks. There's no line of credit checks. It has to be a certified cashier's check made out to the mortgager that was published. So Nation Star Mortgage, Ditech Financial, Fifth Third Mortgage, whatever the published name was in that legal document.
How do you show up with a certified check if you don't know what it's going to go for at auction?
So the day before in the counties that require a certified check, they actually know, and you get on their email list. Now, in Muskegon County and Grand Traverse County, they don't send out a list ahead of time, so you're allowed 1 hour after the sale to go get your check. And in the meantime, they write down your driver's license number and basically take a picture of your driver's license.
It's because they'll come after you if you don't come back with your check?
That I don't know. I do know that in Muskegon, there was a guy banned for a year for bidding and not coming back. I don't know if there's any legal ramifications to not coming back, but I don't want to try.
But I still don't get it, though. It's an auction, right? So you're competing against other people. I mean, is it like the auction that we all think of, where you got the guy up there saying, "Okay, I see 150 over here. Who wants to go 155?" Is it like that?
Yeah, it's I haven't. The auctioneers, which are court officers or deputies or lieutenants, they don't really say too much. They just say, "We're opening the bid for this. What are you willing to go?" And then you pretty much just say numbers until the other guy drops out. So
are you just bringing a cashier's check for like the top amount that you would pay?
No. So what happens is in the counties that require a check ahead of time, it has to be $1 more than what the bank's willing to accept. And if you're on the email list, you got that list the day before.
So you know what that's going to be.
Yes. Okay. And then you have 1 hour to come back with the difference. If you don't come back with the difference, you might as well, because the first check's gone. I haven't heard of.
You're not going to get that first check back.
Exactly. So I know
make sure your car has gas in it.
Yeah. So I know in Washtenaw County, which is a very high dollar county, a boarded up house, 900 square feet goes for $300K down there if it's anywhere near the university. So down there, if there's 10 people bidding, everyone, and the property's $300,000, everyone hands the auctioneer, the court officer, $300,000 checks. And if there's 10 people, he has $3 million in his hand. Wow. Now, if you're not successful, he does give you your check back, obviously. But if you are successful, he keeps your check, and then you have an hour to come back with the difference.
Okay, so you know the minimum amount is going to be that $300,000.
Yes.
Whatever's published.
Yes.
$300,000 plus $1.
Yes.
Wow. So right there, it's just all these rules and having to have the right amount. That's got to weed out a lot of people right there.
It does, because like I said, in Muskegon, there's nothing, guaranteeing you or promising you to the sale. It's basically your name and that's it. And there's a lot of people that try to bluff in Muskegon, and I think if they went to the extreme that other counties do and you had to have a check beforehand, they wouldn't be there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it seems like in Kalamazoo, you probably have a lot of people who are like, I'm not showing up with $50,000 in cash.
There is. And the lady that runs it says, oh, it's safe. I've been doing it like this for years, but you don't know what's going to happen on the way there or on the way home.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of money to be carrying. I guess I'd hire a couple bodyguards and just go to town.
Yeah, yeah.
Really, just bring them a lot of cash and go to town.
Yeah.
Because it probably seems like you have a lot less people bidding against you.
Yeah. Yeah, so once you have identified the property and you go to the sale and you've paid for it, generally a week later you're going to get the deed and affidavit of publication saying it was published legally for 4 weeks, and you're going to get a affidavit of, I think it's non-military, saying that they weren't in the military and that the foreclosure is good, and then you're going to record them documents. And it's going to have a redemption date on it. And
this is a week after.
This is a week after the sale.
Okay,
so when you leave the
that.
sale, you're not going to get anything. You don't get a receipt. You have the second half of your cashier's check basically stating that you purchased the property, and the address might be in the memo line. But other than that, you will get nothing from the court officer.
Wow.
And then you'll get something that comes in the mail from Detroit Legal News, and then you'll get something that comes from the auctioneer. So the auctioneer signs the sheriff's deed along with the attorney. One of the 4 big attorney firms down in Detroit. And then you'll get something from Detroit Legal News. So you merge all them documents together with what they call a redemption affidavit that you'll have to have an attorney draw up. And then you record them, and you sit and wait to get your asset, because people have 6 months or 1 year to redeem them, depending on how much they've paid the balance down or how much land they have on their property.
Wow. So you may put $300,000 into buying one of these foreclosure properties, but it's going to take you 6 months to a year to actually see if you're even going to get that property.
Correct.
Because the people who are still living in the house, the homeowners, they have a redemption period where they can come and pay off that note.
Yes.
So if they can come up with $300,000, then you get nothing except your money back.
You get your money back. You get the interest that was published. So some people have a 4% mortgage. Some people have an 11% mortgage. So you will get that interest to date. And then you get $240 for signing a redemption certificate for your time.
Okay, so you are getting a little bit of interest. It's not like your money's just sitting there doing nothing, but I'm sure you're not doing it to get the interest. You're doing it to get the property at the
Correct.
end of the day.
At the end of the day.
All right. What happens at the end of the redemption period? What do you do at that point?
So at the end of the redemption period, if the people are smart, they would have moved out, because they'll have an eviction on their record if they do have to get evicted. They already have a judgment on them because of the foreclosure process. So they really don't want an eviction in this kind of economy. Very few management companies rent to people with an eviction. And you and I both know if they're foreclosed, their credit's shot. So they're not looking to buy somewhere else.
So they're going to have to rent. Better to rent without the eviction, because then they can actually get more management companies to allow them to live in their properties.
Correct. And so on the 100, if it has a 6-month redemption, on the 181st day, all you do is apply for a writ. There's no going to court and giving them a 30-day notice. They better know how to keep track of time.
So are you in touch with these people at all? Are you saying, hey, guess what? On this date, your time is up? Or you just let it?
Yeah, they know. So they get notification in the mail of when their redemption period's up from the attorney that you're going to hire.
Okay. So you have an attorney who's contacting them,
yes,
and letting them know. Interesting. Okay. So how often then, if you're buying, average of one a week, one of these properties a week at sheriff's sale, how many are you actually carrying through to get to that point where you get the property?
I have been redeemed twice, in 10 years.
So redeemed twice, meaning the homeowners actually came up with the money to pay off the note.
Yes, and the redemption law is really different. One of them I didn't have to let go through, and I did. It was an individual that was a pastor of the church. We foreclosed on the church, but the individual is the one that paid us back. Meaning, if I was to purchase your mortgage, you are the only one that could pay me back. Your name has to be as a remitter. You can't go get a loan from a best friend, or I think you can refinance legally, but you can't get any private money investor. They would have to put the money in your account, and it would have to come with you as the remitter on the check. So the law is pretty clear on when it comes time to redeem.
So you can't sell your redemption rights if you're in foreclosure.
No, you can list the property for sale, and you would be surprised how many people don't know that.
Oh, interesting.
So, and the thing is a lot of people don't know. So we go back to that $125,000 mortgage that someone owed that you just bought for $50,000. They could sell it for $100K and walk away with, after closing costs, probably $40K in their pocket. Their new payoff is now $50,000. So when they go to get redeemed, or they're paying you off, they're not paying you off the $125,000. Their new balance owing was the discounted price.
Wow. So if you bought it for $60,000, they owed $125,000, the redemption value is $60,000.
Yes.
Now, but then of course they'll get that 1099 from the bank.
Yes, they will.
And then they'll also owe taxes on that profit. So they have to check their tax situation too.
Yes. And I've actually seen last week in Muskegon, a homeowner came and bought her house back at a discount.
At the foreclosure.
At the sale. I don't think that's legal, but she was the homeowner.
So she got to get in there.
She owed $53,000, and she paid $16,000 for her own house that she's currently living in.
Wow. So she somehow that got through. She was able to do it.
It takes about a week for the attorneys to sign off on all the paperwork. I don't know if they'll catch it or not, but the name she gave the auctioneer and the name on the mortgage was the exact same name. So I don't know if that's legal or not. I've never seen it, but she took advantage of a discounted rate, and if she gets to stay in her house, great. If not, good for her.
Yeah, good for her. She figured it out.
Yes.
It seems complex. I mean, it's
very.
This is a complex system that's set up here to buy these.
It's very risky, and I've said to a lot of people, you're buying something that you don't get to see. And I, like I said, I sell to other investors that have the money to go and have the capital to go, but they have to be able to walk through and see their asset. And it takes a special person to spend between 30 to the most I've ever spent is $220,000 on a house that you don't get to look at.
Wow. So tell me about some of the homes you've purchased through the sheriff's sale. Like starting with the $220,000 one that you bought. How did that one turn out for you?
We're still going through that one right now. It's in Norton Shores. Fixed up, it's probably worth maybe $400,000. As is, it's probably worth like $300,000. So it'll be marketed to another investor for like $300,000. The gentleman is going to get his full redemption period. We inspected the property, and there's nothing that we can do to speed it up or anything. So he's going to be there for 6 months on our dollar.
But he's paying interest on that $220,000.
He is, but the interest means nothing if he can't redeem it.
Yeah. Give me an example of probably like the worst deal you've done doing this, and then the best deal you've done.
Probably the worst deal I've done, I would have to say, probably a couple years ago in North Muskegon. I paid $22,000 from this mortgage from PNC Bank. I remember it like yesterday. And the people got the full 6-month redemption period. And I would like to say like 5 months into it, I drive by the house to make sure it's still standing, because it's really hard to get insurance on these also, because you don't technically own the house. You own the note. So it's really hard to get insurance on these. So I drive by, and these people are taking everything out. The kitchen cabinets, the furnace, everything. And I immediately call my attorney on his cell phone. I've done enough business. I'm privileged enough to have a cell phone. And he said, there's nothing you can do. You don't own the house yet. So I watched all these people take all these belongings and fixtures and stuff out, and I just pretty much sat there and cried like, there goes my value.
Oh, man.
And I ended up getting rid of it. I think I might have made like $10,000 for the headache, but could have made a lot more if the kitchen and everything else was still in there.
Wow. So did you just sell it as is? Or
So
did you go
I
in
sell
and
them
do
all
the
pretty
work?
much, as is.
So even with all that pain and anguish, you still made $10,000.
Yes, because the balance is just so low, and for those of you that know North Muskegon, it's one of the prestige areas in Muskegon County. It's where everybody really wants to be, and so I did sell that to a guy, and he stuck, I'd like to say 30 or 40,000 into it, so he's at 70,000, and he turned around and then sold it for like 120.
Oh, okay.
So there's always enough meat on the bone for the next guy going the route and exit strategy that I do. Now, some people go to the sale and they still rehab them all themselves, and obviously they make a lot more. I focused more on volume now than swinging a hammer and meeting contractors and everything else. And so that was probably the worst one that I've had. I've bought some that people leave and they don't tell you, and, water pipe busts in the winter. That's the worst thing, is buying one in June or July. That means you can drill the locks out November, December, and it gets cold and the pipes freeze. I had one where 10,000 gallons of water went through the water meter. And if you can imagine what the basement was like once we finally got in.
So you can't do anything about that until it's you're able to drill the locks.
Yeah,
off the door.
once they're abandoned, you can go to the courts and say, hey, no one's living here, and the bank has that option too. But in the meantime, it's just an asset sitting there, and they're living there for free, 6 months for free, sometimes 12 months, depending on like I said, what the redemption was in the legal news. But it's a scary situation because you don't know what's going on inside them walls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's the best deal you've done?
Probably the best deal I've done is profit-wise is in Spring Lake. Bought a house on West Spring Lake Road. Bought the mortgage. We foreclosed on him in 30 days because the guy passed away. So there was no redemption period. It was just 30 days. It was an abandoned property, so an abandonment clause that the law states we can go after. And we cleaned it out. We had like 70,000 into it, and I sold it like a week later for 140,000.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that
That's
was
a good
probably
profit.
no one showed up to the sale that day. I was actually quite surprised. I bought it exactly for the published amount.
Really?
Yeah.
So no competition.
None that day. I was really shocked.
Wow.
And so, because it was a good one.
Yeah.
It was a good one.
Yeah. What are some of the mistakes you see other people making?
I would say the homework. The homework is the number one thing. I was, like I said, I just bought my first one in Traverse City, and there was 3 going that day. One of them was condo association dues. I seen a guy buy condo association dues. I can't imagine that condo association dues would take precedent over a first lien position because they still had a mortgage on it. So, the $6,000 or $7,000 he spent might be gone. But the biggest mistake is people thinking that I can purchase this house for $15,000. It doesn't always, the numbers don't always work out. An example being is, I have a buddy of mine that flipped his first house 5 years ago, and he paid $20,000 for the house, and he says, "Oh, it's worth $60,000." It's worth $60,000 fixed up, and he stuck $25,000 into it, and to this day, he still says he paid $20,000 for that house. No, you paid $45,000 for that house because you have $45,000 into it. So it's like the gambler.
He there's what he paid and then what he had to put
Yeah.
into
So
it
at the end of the day, it's like the gambler that goes to the casino and says, "I want $1,000," but they won't tell you that they spent $2,000 to win that 1,000. It's the same exact thing. So real estate's the same thing. What is your all-in costs? And then is it a good deal? And a lot of people, they tend to forget about the all-in cost, the after repair value, because the as-is value and after repair value is 2 different things. Obviously, the as-is will be a lot cheaper, but when you get it to the after repair value condition, is it still a good deal? And does it meet your guidelines for the profit that you want to make?
The mistake you see people making is just not understanding the money that they're going to have to put into a deal, and whether it's going to be, the profit is going to be worth their effort.
Yeah, that's it. And right now in this market, And I would say even for Grand Rapids, I haven't been able to pull the trigger over here yet this year. It's very competitive here. But there are rehabbers that are fine making $5,000 on a deal. That's just too thin. I don't see any reason to do that. But, we're in a market, with the rentals in Grand Rapids with, I think, less than a 1% vacancy rate. And flippers are willing to make $5,000 on a flip because the house is on the market in like 2 weeks. So that's not up my avenue. There's no way I would risk, $35,000 to make $5,000. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. You want what's your minimum profit that you want to see?
I tend not to hop in my car and drive to the auction if I can't make $25,000 to $30,000.
Oh, okay. So you're going to make whatever deal you do, you're going to make $25,000, $30,000.
Yes,
that's where you want to be.
Yes.
And are you able to achieve that most of the time?
I would say 80 to 90% of the time.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about tax sales.
Yep.
So we were just what we've just been discussing are the sheriff sales, the first mortgage. You're buying the mortgages, the first mortgage in the different counties. What's the difference between that and a tax sale?
So the sheriff sales, generally come with liens, mortgages, workers' liens, and they're every week. With the tax sale, I actually started buying tax sales 16 years ago. I went to my first one when I was 18 years old, and it was down in Lansing, and they did all the counties, and it took like 3 days, and you had to bring traveler's checks, and then you signed them over to, the municipalities. With the tax sale, people can still have a lien on their property, but it's wiped out the day of the March 31st of that year. So everything is wiped out, including water bills with the tax sales. The only thing that stays are assessments, sidewalk assessments, streetlight assessments, things of that nature.
So okay, help me understand this. So a tax sale, a tax sale is someone didn't pay their property tax.
Correct.
And that whatever they owe is going up for tax sale. So
correct.
If they owe $10,000 in property tax, you can buy their property through tax auction for $10,000.
Yes.
And if they have a mortgage on their home for $150,000,
yes,
that gets wiped out.
Yes. Yes, and it's funny you say that.
Yeah.
So I did buy, just a little quick story, I did buy one in Muskegon. It was actually in Norton Shores, and the lady was current on her payments with Fifth Third Bank. When I knocked on her door and told her that I'm the new owner of her place, she almost fell into my arms and said, "No, you're not. I've been making my house payment." I said, "Well, I bought your house for back tax." She said, "No, my taxes and insurance are included in my payment."
In her escrow. She was being escrowed.
In her escrow. And this does happen. She did successfully sue Fifth Third Bank for $500,000 and purchased the house back from me.
Wow.
So it's just a paperwork glitch, but it happens all the time. And with the tax sale, the banks are notified. And I guess if someone owes $60,000 and the house is only worth $30,000, and they're notified of a $5,000 tax lien, why would the bank now have $65,000 into this house that's worth $30,000? So they just they just write it off.
So this is a huge disservice to the homeowners, though, because a lot of homeowners have mortgages where they're paying escrows. They're paying the taxes and insurance in their mortgage payment.
Yes.
And they're assuming that the bank or the lender is going to be paying their taxes, property taxes on their behalf, as well as their property insurance on their behalf. But that is not always the case.
Correct.
And in fact, I think I said on a previous podcast, I was in a situation where for 2 years, the bank was paying the property tax, but they were paying it for a different property.
Oh.
Not the one that that I owned. And it took me 2 years to figure that out.
Well, I'm glad you caught it.
Yeah. So, I guess the warning there to homeowners is don't assume that your property taxes are being paid by the bank. Check. You can go online and just check to see if your property taxes have been paid.
Yeah, and the tax sale, they're notified in advance. Their house is posted twice with legal notices. It's published in your local newspaper, not the legal news, but the local newspaper.
Most people aren't checking the newspaper.
But it is posted on their house, and a picture's taken.
So someone comes and actually posts it to their house.
Yeah, but I guess if you're if you know your ducks are in a row and everything's squared away, why worry about that notice, I guess? If you've been making your mortgage payment for the last 10 years, this, with all the scams that people have nowadays and call us and, respond to this email, for Nigerian lotteries and everything else, all the scams that are going on, that might just go in the garbage. But in this one case, out of probably 100 tax sale properties I've purchased, this is the first one I've heard of where she was successful in suing the bank and won.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good for her. She should win. That's a huge violation of trust there.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get back to the tax auction. So basically, if you buy something at tax auction, you're paying off the property taxes that are owed, and everything else except for maybe some assessments from the city is wiped away.
Yes. Yeah. So, garbage fees, if there's certain municipalities where you can't have garbage in the front yard or a couch on the terrace. If you do, the city comes, picks it up, fines you $110. Water bills. I've bought a property with a $2,000 water bill. It goes right through the shredder with the tax sale. With the sheriff's sale, it's staying with the property. So the tax sale, come March 31st of that year, all liens are wiped away. Mortgages, municipality liens, everything. The only thing that stays, like I said, is assessments.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like a tax sale, you can find much better deals, but it seems like they'd be harder to find, though.
Yes. So the tax sale has been very, very lucrative and very successful for myself until about 5 years ago. And that's when they created what they call a land bank. And in Muskegon County, they go through and take all the properties of the areas you or I would live in, the good areas, the Class A and B neighborhoods. In Grand Rapids, they take everything. The city of Grand Rapids takes everything into a land bank. So
it's the city that created the land banks.
Correct.
They created them specifically to buy up tax auction properties?
As far as I know, they don't buy anything else but and so then they get them at the minimum bid. And I've always thought that government, shouldn't be in real estate. I mean, I have a buddy that owns a post office, so if the post office is renting from them, why should the government be rehabbing houses? But unfortunately, they do. So in Grand Rapids, this year, there was a couple in Kentwood and a couple in Wyoming, but other than that, nothing in Grand Rapids. They take everything, which I think is fair. If you're going to take everything, take everything. In Muskegon, they select and pick and choose what they want. They cherry pick everything.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
So up to 6 years ago, you were loving the tax auctions.
I was.
Now it's. Are you still doing tax auctions? Are you picking anything up?
I do, but they're very few and far between. And you have a lot of people that are there with their tax return. Someone that gets $9,000-$10,000 back in their taxes. They can buy a nice home for their family. Mm-hmm. The sheriff's sale in the busiest county, there might be 10 or 15 people. A tax sale, 300 to 400 people at a tax sale.
Wow, a lot of people.
It's a lot different.
Uh-huh.
A lot different.
So what have you picked up at a tax sale then in the past 6 years?
Mainly rentals. Because you can, your all-in costs, are generally around $15,000 or $20,000. So, when you can get a duplex for $20,000 and it rents out for $1,100 a month, it's good investment. Mm-hmm. So the land bank in Muskegon doesn't take any multifamilies. So them are the ones that I shoot for. In Grand Rapids, again, they take everything. So it's a lot different over here.
And then the actual auction, do you have to go to Lansing for that, or are you?
No, so yeah.
Regional?
So when they first started doing it, you had to bring traveler's checks down to Lansing, and then they got rid of that, and they started putting it on the local municipality, and there you paid cash. So if you were going to spend $100,000, you had $100,000 cash in your pocket. Everybody did. And there was state police in the room, and it was heavily guarded, and it was quite the experience. And then probably about 6-7 years ago, Tax Title Services, Title Check LLC out of Kalamazoo, started running the auction for the whole state. And now you pay the first $1,000 in cash, and then the difference can be in a cashier's check or personal check. So it's a lot different. And the reason is a lot of people were laundering money through the auction and real estate and everything else. It just wasn't traceable. So when I first started doing it, like I said, it was pretty secure. And then once it came to the local municipalities, it was all cash. And I can remember a year where literally it was like $60,000 cash in my pocket, and I spent it all. And you're just hoping that it all goes the right way.
People were laundering money, like gangs?
I think drug dealers.
Drug dealers?
Yeah, they show up with a black backpack and, from all different parts. And it's just not in Muskegon, it's everywhere. But when it's an all cash business, it's pretty lucrative.
Yeah. So they changed it because of
they
that.
did. They did change it, and that was the reason they said was, they felt as though people was laundering money and
I'm shocked. Shocked that people would be laundering money in an all
who
cash
does that?
environment. Yeah. So back to the tax sale. Let's say you pick something up. What do you do then?
So you wait. They give you a receipt, and you sign a receipt saying that you're not going to enter the property or break in or anything else like that. They do give you permission to secure it. So 30 to 45 days, you'll get what comes in the mail. It's a governmental deed. And with a governmental deed, it's a horrible deed because you have to get quiet title on the property to issue someone a warranty deed when you go to sell it or refinance if you're going to turn it into a rental, etc. So in that 30 to 45 months, you go knock on the door, talk to the people, see what their, interests are, if they're going to stay there, they want to rent it. If they say, yeah, we're just going to ride it out, you actually have to evict them with a 30-day notice. So it's not like the sheriff's sale where you just go and get a writ the next day. Tax sale tenants or tax sale people that are occupying the place have rights. And so you have to go through the full eviction process and just make sure you list all other occupants on the summons and complaint to get them out. And then the asset becomes yours after they're out.
Is there any sort of redemption period for the homeowner during the tax sale?
No. So as of March 31st, and that's the most important date, and they stress that so much when you go to the sale, they go over like 1 hour worth of rules. Anything that happens after March 31st is like void, with the exception of the sale. So if they try to bring in, if they're behind $5,000 and they bring in $10,000 on April 3rd, it's too late. A circuit court judge has already foreclosed on it and issued the governmental deed to the county.
They have no recourse at that point.
None.
What's the timeline then? It seems like with the tax auction, you can take possession of the property a lot quicker than you could with the sheriff's sale.
Absolutely. I would say at most 45 days you could have possession of the property. So you start, you get your receipt, you go talk to the people within a week. Yeah, we're just going to let you kick us out. We're not interested in renting, or we're squatters, or, all that stuff happens. And so you kick them out, and then you decide, hey, am I going to rehab this? Am I going to sell it as is to another investor? Am I going to rent it? What exit strategy are you going to do? And you have to keep in mind, like I said, it comes with a governmental deed. And a governmental deed you cannot get title insurance on, and you have to hire an attorney to get a quiet title, and that takes about 4 weeks. So you got your 45 days into waiting for the governmental deed to come in the mail from your local county treasurer. And then you got another 4 weeks of publications in the legal news of quiet title saying you're suing these people for their interest because they didn't sign for the notification that came to their door. So everyone is served with certified mail that's in tax foreclosure. If they didn't sign, that governmental deed's not going to be any good.
So you have an attorney on your team that
Yes.
helps you through all this?
Yes, I do.
It seems like a lot of documents.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And without him, it's just about impossible. There's just no way. I mean, I have to go to each hearing, but to talk about the MCL codes and the different laws that they go through, yeah, I have a headache just sitting there listening to them.
Yeah. So talk about your team then for a moment here, because it seems like if you're just trying to do this yourself, going back to your first mistake ever,
Yeah.
If you're trying to do it all yourself, you're just in for a world of trouble, it sounds like.
Yeah, I would say no matter what route you go, you need a good title company. Whether it's a tax sale or sheriff's sale, you need to, unless you know how to find out if there's assessments on a property, or if you know how to find out if it's a first mortgage on your own, you need a good title company. And, with the title company, you need someone that's going to go to bat for you and stick behind their decision when they tell you what their decision is. your information that you give them is pertinent to the decision that they make. And if they tell me it's a first and it's not a first, I'm out a lot of money. So you got to trust them. Same with the tax sale. So, if they come back and say, hey, there's no liens on this property as far as assessments because everything gets wiped out. And then all of a sudden a $20,000 water connection assessment pops up from 10 years ago, you're in trouble. So you got to have a good title company. And then more importantly, you have to have a good attorney. I mean, because the attorney's the one that dots the I's and crosses the T's and gets your asset. You might purchase it, but at the end of the day, he's the one that's going to get it to you. He's the one that's going to deliver.
So what are you typically spending on attorneys then, or on your attorney
Last year, I think we wrote off close to $60,000 in attorney fees.
Wow, okay. $60,000, and how many did you pick up?
Last year I did 29 sheriff sales, and I bought 3 from the tax sale.
So you're looking at just around $2,000 each property in attorney fees.
It's generally around like $1,100. That number also includes the evictions from the rental units I have. Okay. So it all blends together through, LLC tax through whatever they call it.
Right,
I don't even know what it's called, but yeah, it all blends together.
Okay. And then have you been surprised when you picked up a property by some of the title issues that you might not have been aware of?
I had one a long time ago. So in that 30 to 45 days that the county is doing whatever they do, the IRS is the only person left that can actually pay you off and take the property. So, and that's at a tax sale. So if someone has an IRS lien, at the end of the day, the IRS can trump what you paid, and then they pay you interest on your money and stuff. I've never heard of them paying anyone off, but they have to be notified, and they're notified after the sale, not before the sale.
Mm-hmm. So you might find out after the fact that there's an IRS lien.
And they disclosed it at the sale in that little hour rules meeting that they have with everybody, that the IRS still might notify you and say, hey, we have a lien against this person. We see the property's worth $40,000. We see you paid $10,000. They owe us $5,000. We're going to pay you back, and we'll have $15,000 into a $40,000 property. So I've never heard of it happening, but I do know of properties that have sold with IRS liens on them. And if you're the winning bidder, that IRS lien doesn't stay with the property. IRS liens stay with the person, but that person is attached to the property, so the lien goes with that person.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's like a judgment in court. It can go against any financial asset that a person has.
All right. Well, Stephen, as we wrap it up, I'm wondering what advice you would have for our listeners who like what you're saying and think they might want to give it a try.
I would just say, Brian, that it has amazing returns and amazing rewards, but it is probably the highest rate of risk in any real estate investing. You're buying an asset that you don't get to look at, and in return also not knowing what you're buying is frustrating, and it takes a special person. But I can tell you, if you buy it right with anything, if you buy it right and you can buy low essentially and sell high, you'll do just fine. And the biggest mistake, like I said, I can't stress it enough, is making sure you're buying a first mortgage. And with that being said, you can't go wrong. If you buy a second, you might lose some sleep. If you buy a first and you've done your homework, you'll be just fine. And I can't stress enough to people that, here in Grand Rapids, there's, I go up against people that bring $20, $30 million to the sale. There's a guy here from Chicago that is buying everything up, and I think last week he spent $1.4 million on 7 properties. You can compete with him, okay? Because at the end of the day, he's going to get burned. And as long as you continually, strive to give it your all, eventually you will get that one deal, and you'll be happy with that deal as long as you've done your homework.
Great advice. I want to thank you for sharing this information on sheriff sales, tax sales, and just your methodology and system for finding these properties and investing in them and profiting from them. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Brian, for having me.
This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And Point Central, the leading provider of enterprise-scale smart home automation for short and long-term rental property managers. Learn more at pointcentral.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.